Alright guys, so in this video we're going to learn about client directives in Astro. And client directives control how a UI framework component are iterated on a page. And by default, a UI framework component is not iterated in the client. So if you know a bit about Astro, you know that Astro ships 0 JavaScript. So by default, if you add a UI framework and no client directive is provided, the HTML that is going to render on the page will be without JavaScript. And one thing to also notice is that a client directive can only be used on a UI framework. So you can't directly import it to your own custom components, like pass it as a props or using it with dynamic tags. In case if you don't know what dynamic tags, let me just open this on a new tab and quickly show you. Yeah, so this is what dynamic tags is. It's just like creating a variable, then giving it a value, and just try to use that as a component here. So let me just get rid of this. So we have different client directives, but the first one we'll be talking about is the load directive. And as you can see, it has a priority of high and is mostly useful if you want to like render something immediately on the page when it loads. So as you can see, load and iterate the component JavaScript immediately on page load. So this is an example here, but I'll quickly go to my code. And in case if this is is overwhelming to you, rather, is a project that I shared a couple of weeks ago, or a week rather, depending on when this video comes out. Basically it's a gym template that I'm working on. So if you are interested in this, just click on the link in the description. But that aside, let me just go back to VS Code, and right here in this component I just create one, say I think they called it buy button. So buy button.tsx, and this is a React component. Remember, on Astro you can use whatever framework you choose. So I'll just say RAFC like so. Get rid of this. What I'll just do, I'll just say handle, let me just say handle by now, and let me allow Copilot to do this for us. So I just say console, what should we use, alert? We don't know now. Okay, let's just use alert. Then yeah, we'll just call the function. Let me just make this a button. See on click, then we just say handle by now, and let me complete it like so. So I will save now, and should we do it here? Let me just add it before this consultation button. So we'll go to the hero Astro file. So let me just do it. Yeah. So say by button like so. Then I will import it like so. So I'll save the file. It's going to refresh, so we should see it before on top of this button right now. Okay, yeah, it is. So if I click on it, of course it's not going to work. Remember that if you don't add a client directive, it's going to render 0 JavaScript, which means there's no hydration. So basically we want to do that. So to do that, we just set the client like so. Then we'll have a couple of them, but we're starting with the load here. So click on load like this, and I will save. So what this means is that as soon as this page loads, automatically now this becomes functional. So if I click on this, you see now that buy now clicked. So that's kind of straightforward. So the next one we have is idle, and this has a priority of medium. So it's useful for low priority UI elements that don't need to be immediately interactive. And what it does is that it loads and iterate the component JavaScript once the page is done with its initial load. So basically, if you try to click on the button and the page is not done with its initial load, it kind of stores the function in the queue using this request idle callback. So you can just I think it's on Mozilla Firefox. So if I open this on a new tab, you can read more about it. But basically what it just does is that once you click on that particular component and the page has not fully loaded, it's going to queue the function. So basically, it's going to queue the action, then renders it immediately once that page loads. So we're still going to use, because it's still the directives right here, so we can just say idle instead of load. Now save. Then if we check back, you see that it's not going to like tell a difference, because the thing loads is going to load like way fast. So if I click on this, you can see okay, it's taking some time. Now it's showing. All right, because the page has not fully loaded. So if the page has not fully loaded, okay, now it's going to work once because the page has fully loaded. I don't know if I should throttle this so that it should be 3G. So where did you do that? So in network, so let's just go to slow 4G, and let me click on this. So I'm trying to click on the buy button. You can see now it shows, but it took a little bit of delay. And there's also an option here called timeout. So basically, this is the maximum time to wait in milliseconds before hydrating the component, even if the page is not done here with its initial load. So basically, you can just set like a minimum timeout so that even though the page is not done with the load, like it's not done loading, you can make it interactive. So let's still do, I think I should do 3G this time. Then to do that, you just say what's the syntax for it again? Okay, so we just say double curly bracket and say timeout, and let's just use the 500 they used in the docs. So I will save here. Then if I go back, see it's refreshing, but after 500 milliseconds it's going to work. So if I click on it now, you see it's not working. Or let's just see once that time hits. So now you can see that it's working. And like I said, the function is being queued. So once I click on it, it's going to queue the function and execute it once it gets to that time. So you should test it out for yourself and see how it is. But most times you can see that the scenario they use it for is show hide button. And me, I've never really used this, so I don't think I'll ever use it, to be very honest. The next one is visible. So visible has a priority of low and is useful for low priority UI elements. So basically elements you don't want to render immediately. And how this visible directive works is that it uses an intersection observer inside it or internally to keep track of the visibility. So in case if you don't know what an intersection observer is, an intersection observer is it's an API in JavaScript that tells you when a specific element enters or leave a page. So in this context now, we can set our own component to visible. But if I go, I think I have like let me change this back to no throttle. If I scroll down, this section here is more like a testimonial section. You can see it's interactive, and I think that's what they use as a use case. So carousel is mostly used when you have a carousel or stuffs like this. So it's being functional right now, but I'm just going to like get rid of the code. So I think I call that results, and I'll get rid of it like so. I'm going to write it again. So basically we say the client should be visible like so. So if the page loads now, let me go back to the top, refresh. All right, so the page has loaded, but that component, which is in our case the results carousel, is not functional yet. So if I scroll down, it's not going to be functional till it's into the viewport with. So once I scroll down to it, now it becomes functional. So if I click on it now, it's going to work. But I think there's also a option called, or a value called root margin. And basically the root margin allows you to like specify the time that the component should show. So we need to scroll in view before this will show. But with the root margin value, so let me just copy everything here and paste it here like so. So basically now we don't have to like necessarily scroll to this part again. So if I go back to the top and scroll down, so when I get to like 200 pixel before, it's going to hydrate, which means it's going to be functional. So if I click on it, you can see it's working. All right, so that's for that. All these are kind of straightforward, but you can see the use cases of when to use each of them. So the next one is the media. So it has a priority of low and it's useful for sidebar toggles. So it's mainly useful for opening and closing hamburger menu like so. So this is where it's mostly useful. And also it accepts a string. So say it loads and hydrates the component JavaScript once a certain CSS media query is met. But you should also know that if the component is already hidden, which in my case is in CSS, so if I go to like I'm on desktop mode, it's hidden, but on mobile, it's showing. So if the component is already hidden and shown by a media query on CSS, then they are just letting us know that we can just default to divisible. But if you know you don't want to do that, you should just like add this to it. But either ways, we are going to like, I'm still going to show you how to do it. So I will copy it, then I will go to my layout, Astro, that's where my header is. Then I'll get rid of this one and paste it right here and save. And I'll change mine to main weight because I'm going from mobile to desktop. And let me just put like 768 pixels, 68px, and save. All right. So now if I click on this, it's not going to work. And if you feel it's the entire page, I can click on the buy button. You can see the buy button is working, but this guy is not working. So you can see that we added a breakpoint of 768. So until we get to 768, this will not be functional. So let me bring it down to a smaller number now. So let me just say 320 and above. So from 320 and above, this guy now will become functional. So if I click on it now, you can see it's working. But since if you're already doing like the toggling, so hiding and showing it from CSS, it's not advisable to use the media, this media directive. All right, so and the final one we have is the client only directive. So basically this skips the HTML server rendering, and the way it works is that it's kind of similar to client load in the sense that it loads, renders, and hydrates the component immediately on page load. But the catch now is that you must pass the component correct framework as a value, because Astro doesn't run the component during your build on the server. And again, Astro doesn't know what framework your component uses unless you tell it explicitly. So that was that. By the way, this word was hard to pronounce though. So if we go back now, I think we can still use by the way, let me just change this back to visible. So if we go back to the hero component like so, I can just decide to make this guy client only. Then we can specify the framework. So in our case, we're using React, I think, just to be sure. Yeah. Then I will not do a self-closing. I will just add this to it. Then I can just say buy button. So if I save now and go back, you see that it's going to disappear. Like it's not going to show immediately. Rather, see, it took about 2 seconds. So if I refresh again, just take note of this. Everything is going to render or hydrate, but this will take about some seconds before it shows. So I've seen a use case of this yet. You can let me know in the comments when to use something like this. But there's a way to like go about it and show like a loading message. So to do that, inside this, like so, I think it's right here, right? Okay, yeah. So you need to add like let me just copy it, paste it here. So you need to add like a slot of fallback of loading, as you can see. And I just realized that I added the buy button twice after we added it here. So regardless, let me see test it out again. So if I even save like so and go back, it's still going to take about 2 seconds before this one shows. You can see. So if I uncomment this one now and save it and go back, you'll see that we'll get that loading message immediately. You can see loading for the buy button shows. And like I said, you can let me know in the comments when to use something like this. But another catch is that if I change this to view, it's still going to work. So if I save this to save to view, and I go back now and the page, you see loading buy button, and I click on it, it's still working fine. So I guess it's going to work fine on development, but you're going to run into issues on production. I've not tested it yet though, but it's just my assumption. Alright guys, so that's the end of the video. Do well to leave your questions in the comments. Also like and share the video if you found it helpful.